This little girl's face, she didn't get to have the life that she should have had.
Her small broken body was found beneath some trash. Almost 30 years later, her murder remains unsolved.
He was, I don't know, he was just a ray of sunshine all the time. He had these little eyes that when he'd smile, they just looked like life.
He was fighting an addiction his family hoped he'd beat. He was murdered before he got that chance. A woman vanishes into the night. Her family still waits before saying a final goodbye.
You know, all of a sudden there's a chance we're going to get that call, and this is one reason I'm having so hard time putting that cross up in a grave.
She deserves justice, and we all deserve justice.
So many searching for answers, clinging to hope, and seeking justice.
As Alaskans, we've become too familiar with stories of the missing and murdered. Alaska's indigenous peoples suffer a disproportionately higher rate of these types of violence. We're going to introduce you to 4 people, murdered or missing, but they are much more than how their lives ended. We want you to know how they lived. None of these cases have been solved, and whether their families are seeking justice or have found some version of their own peace, they all want answers. In the spring of 1991, someone killed 12-year-old Shauna Yvonne. Her beaten body found weeks after she disappeared. Her murder remains unsolved. And as the years go by, there are fewer people around to push for answers. Here's Daniela Rivera with Beautiful Soul.
Shauna Yvonne's case went cold quickly. There wasn't much to go on. What was a crime scene 29 years ago is a parking lot today. Shauna's immediate family members have all passed away, but her friends remember her smile, how it could light up a room, and they want her killer brought to justice. When 12-year-old Shauna Yvonne disappeared in April of 1991, she was considered a runaway.
After she came home, changed clothes, left with a friend, I didn't see her again.
Shauna's mother, Rose Yvonne, reported her missing. 6 weeks later, she learned Shauna had been murdered.
I just don't know why this is happening and why it would happen to my daughter.
Whoever killed Shauna tried to hide her body. She was found in the back doorway of an abandoned building near 6th Avenue and C Street. Her decomposing remains found lying under trash, a street sign, and a wooden pallet piled on top of her. Her cause of death, blunt force trauma to the head.
I never thought this would happen to my daughter, and if I had known, I would have had her carry things that could protect her.
Shauna left her village on Nunivak Island in the middle of the Bering Sea and moved to Anchorage to finish school.
We were both in 7th grade at Clark Junior High School.
She and Lena Austin became fast friends.
She just came in the room and she had like this biggest smile on her face like she always did. And we just became friends right then and there.
Shauna was known to her friends and family as Twinkie.
I don't know why she ended up with Twinkie. It's probably because she ate so many of them.
But adjusting to life in a big city takes time, and Shauna's life would soon be cut short. Shauna succumbed to culture shock in the city, according to Anchorage Daily News Archives. The paper reported on her funeral service in Anchorage before she was taken to Bethel for burial. Shauna's cousin sang Jesus Loves Me. The pastor lamented what might have been. She wanted to travel, he said. She wanted to experience life. Exactly 1 year after her body was found, APD investigators said they'd reached a dead end in the case. After Shauna went missing, her mother walked the streets, putting up handwritten signs announcing her daughter as a missing person. But by 2002, more than a decade later, police had lost contact with Shauna's family. The crime scene, now an empty field. But APD homicide detective Glenn Klinkart had continued to work Shauna's case.
My examination so far of the case indicates that there were a lot of suspects. In fact, that may have been one of the problems, is that everybody had a theory about what happened to poor Shauna.
Still, he had high hopes of finding her killer using new technology.
DNA. As well as new fingerprinting techniques. So we're going to be looking at that, especially trace evidence, those items that were left there that the killer may have left.
But time marched on, and whatever evidence existed did not resolve the case. Detective Klinkart left APD, and Shauna's murder remains unsolved.
We asked the Anchorage Police Department to discuss Shauna's case with us for this report. Our requests were denied, with police saying the nearly 3 decades-old case is an open investigation.
30 years later, and the person who did it to her hasn't been caught.
There are plenty of happy memories of Shauna, but talking about her case opens up an old wound for those who remember what it was like to lose her.
That someone could do that to her and hid her body underneath a board, and that she had been beaten so bad into her head, and that's what killed her. And then hid her body in that stairwell. And I know it was years ago, but it was just like the worst thing we ever went through.
Lena remains friends with others who knew and loved Shauna and says none of them have given up hope they'll see her killer brought to justice.
We want to know because, you know, we were her friends. And like I said, I haven't heard from any of the detectives in probably about 10 years.
Time has done little to fade Shauna's memory in the hearts of those who loved her.
If she would be here right now, you'd probably see how wonderful she was.
Her name is now etched in stone at the Homicide Victims Memorial in downtown Anchorage, and her portrait is preserved thanks to the work of a Dillingham artist.
I don't know that much about her, but I can see that she's just a beautiful little girl, and she should have had a life.
Amber Webb created an oversized cuspbuck bearing the names and faces of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. Shauna's bright smile is at the center.
The pain that I felt in drawing her portrait was that there was no darkness there. It was just like pure light, like a child would have. There's always light reflection in people's eyes, and her light reflection looked like stars. And I remember trying to make sure that I got those stars in there.
The cuspbuck is now on display at the Anchorage Museum, yards away from where Shauna was found.
And I think that project is calling out justice for all Native women, not just the women on that project and not just women who've been killed.
When Amber looks at Shauna's portrait, she sees generations of Indigenous people whose stories are untold, people who also knew the violence that cut Shauna's life short.
Women have been fighting for justice for 40 years, 50 years, but it's only now that things are starting to really move. And I just imagine if people had been listening, 50 years ago, she wouldn't have been killed. She would have had a different life,
It's impossible to know what Shauna's life could have become had she not been robbed of the chance to grow up.
She was an innocent kid who had a golden heart, and she trusted anybody.
Her mother, Rose, hoped for answers that didn't come in her lifetime.
There's just a handful of us friends that knew her.
And just a few left to fight for justice for Shauna.
I feel like it's been forgotten.
Why do you feel like it's been forgotten?
Because it happened so long ago, and I hate to say this, but because she's Native.
More than a name, a face, and now a case number.
She was a beautiful soul. She was precious.
Coming up.
She was everybody's friend. She was always making somebody laugh over her silly little comments about anything.
2 women vanished within months of each other. Though the circumstances are very different, their families have a shared connection.
Of course, as time go on, you realize that chances are slimmer and slimmer, but it's still there.
That hope.
At hope.
I think someone harmed her. She was 4'11". She was really tiny. She was really beautiful. And she's a little firecracker.
Valerie and Mary Ann, two women who disappeared within months of each other in 2012. There's no connection between them, but their families share the same hope and a wish for answers. Here's Jill Burke with Vanished.
When Victor Sifsoff learned his daughter Valerie had gone missing, the Bristol Bay fisherman did what any father would do. He dropped everything and launched a rescue mission, as did the family of Mary Ann Alexie. Both women disappeared in 2012 in separate events, 1 minute here, the next gone. Her smile says it all. Valerie Sifsoff, small in stature, lived large. By the summer of 2012, Valerie, then 43, moved back to Alaska from Seattle and settled in Anchorage with a boyfriend. A weekend outing brought them to a scenic getaway south of the city.
He's like the outdoors. Just always having fun.
Valerie's adventures at Granite Creek Campground would be her last. Her boyfriend told police she'd walked off at midnight after the two had a fight. She was never seen again.
I was kind of numb, to tell the truth, because I knew it was, really serious.
Victor Sifsoff knew Alaska's statistics, that the state could be a dangerous place for women, and that worried him.
I thought maybe somebody abducted her. I was thinking all kinds of things.
The family, state troopers, the military, and volunteers launched extensive searches by ground.
We had 3 dog teams out.
By air.
And we had the Alaska State Trooper helicopter out again today.
In the water.
We've been in the water before, but not to the extent we're doing it this time. We have 4 boats.
Days became weeks, then months.
Every lead that was there, I followed all the way through, and all of them went kind of a dead end.
Then in October, another woman, another disappearance, this time in Anchorage.
Her laugh was contagious. She was everybody's friend.
A late night October 10th would be the last time anyone would hear from 33-year-old Mary Ann Alexie, a mother of 4 from Fairbanks.
We know that at one point she contacted family members, she contacted friends, and then she stopped making calls.
Her family says she'd come to Anchorage in search of a better life.
We were really proud of the fact that she was really ready to go to school and get her life together.
The last call Alexie made was late at night. She'd sounded intoxicated, said she was in Spenard, lost, and in need of a place to sleep.
When the family first had a chance to interact with Anchorage police, what was that like?
The concerning thing to me was that they had us meet with a homicide detective, and that kind of set off alarm bells.
Anchorage police told us their main focus is always figuring out what happened, and they often can't share many details. They know that can be difficult. At the time, all Alexie's family could do was wait for answers.
Someone knows what happened to her. The family needs some kind of closure.
Mary Ann's niece says her aunt would never have just walked away from her life, nor would she have hurt herself.
Because there was a time period when I was a teenager and I was personally having a hard time. And she kind of whipped me into shape. She said, don't you ever think about that. Self-harm is not the way to go. Life is tough, but you're tougher. And so she wouldn't do that. She was just, she was like my second mom.
And for Mary Ann Alexie's brother, Robert, the loss was too much. The family says his suicide was fueled by his sister's disappearance.
He was just stuck thinking about her and kind of upset with himself that he wasn't there to help her, protect her.
Tell me about, being a Native woman and a Native woman who goes missing. Do you feel that has had any impact on the quality or the seriousness of the investigations from law enforcement?
Oh, I do. I feel like there's been some kind of prejudice because honestly, we would have, I feel like if we were a different skin color, we would have gotten a little more action from the police, a little more public support. We just want to find her. I personally don't believe she's alive anymore. It's been too long. We just want to find her and bury her.
In 2012, as Alexi's family searched Anchorage for answers, Sifsof's family was battling the change of seasons, a river freezing up, and with it, perhaps the answers they'd sought but failed to find. Only one clue turned up: clothing found near the river, the same dark hoodie Valerie had been wearing the night she disappeared.
It was like a stab in the heart.
Sifsof doesn't believe his daughter's boyfriend hurt her.
I just don't believe it happened that way.
Do you think there's any way she would have hurt herself? That she would have done something intentionally?
I seriously doubt that. She did. She loved life, and I never seen any indication of hurting herself.
The conclusion he now lives with: it was not a person who harmed Valerie, but a place.
It was a swift creek, and most people wouldn't be able to get out of it once they fill in.
Victor Sifsof still expects the phone to ring with his daughter's voice on the other end. Once, he did discover a text from her.
I just knew she was alive.
Only to find out it was sent in the days before she went missing.
And of course, when I realized it wasn't, you just...
Another painful, false hope. Answers about Valerie's disappearance may lie with a swift, swollen river and a wrong turn in Alaska's dusky summer nights.
I just came to the conclusion that more than likely it was an accident and not something bad like a murder or something. I could be wrong. I guess maybe deep down I feel like, for me, I'd like to believe that maybe, because I don't like, I obviously wouldn't want to see her hurt or, the other part is I never want to accuse anybody that I'm not totally sure about, and I see too much of that.
Drowning is a theory the Alaska State Troopers appeared at the time to favor as well.
Our concern is that there's some log jams that she may actually be under one of the log jams.
The family hasn't had the heart to take the final step.
But I always felt like, all of a sudden there's a chance I'm going to get that call, and this is one reason I'm having so hard time putting that cross up in a grave, because I always expected that call. Of course, as time go on, you realize that chances are slimmer and slimmer, but it's still there.
That hope.
That hope.
Grief comes in uninvited waves. Denial, then acceptance, now an intentional act of a father's love.
I know she always wanted me to be happy, so I'd like her to know that, we, not only myself, but all of us did the very best we could to find her. Obviously we love her very much, and always will. And someday I hope to see her again.
Valerie's father shared with us that he wishes troopers had been able to start their search sooner and with more personnel. Meanwhile, the niece of Marianne said that just this year, troopers showed up in their village of Nikolai looking to collect DNA to help with Marianne's case, but they didn't say why or what for. It was a recent, painful reminder that Marianne remains missing and that after so much time, there are so few answers.
Coming up.
When I heard those words, he did not survive, it was like an atomic bomb went off inside me.
Loved by his family and filled with a hopeful future, a troubled young man is found dead on an Anchorage street.
He pulled out his little coin. He's like, it's my 6-month coin. He was so proud of it, just beaming, so proud of himself.
Brandon Erlmeyer was struggling, faced with an addiction he'd overcome once, but then fell back into its grasp. His family believes he would have recovered if he'd only had more time.
I wish you could have known him. He was such an amazing, kid and human being.
Brandon Erlmeyer, 20 years old, handsome and funny, beloved by his family.
That's his little smile. He was just so happy. That's him as a baby in my lap. It's one of my favorites. Obviously, the picture's a little worn.
Becoming an adult can be difficult for anyone, but especially hard when you have a heroin addiction.
It was really hard when he relapsed.
Brandon had overcome addiction before, and his family was confident he'd beat it again.
I was so sure with everything in my entire soul that he would get better.
But then came a cold, icy night, one no loving family could forget. December 2nd, 2017.
I guess I used to worry more about him ODing.
Yeah, I never thought he would get murdered. Never.
My name's Nancy Furlow, and my Tlingit name is Satquan. His name is Brandon Christopher Erlmeyer. His Tlingit name was Yek Yugu, and he was murdered on East 6th Avenue in Anchorage.
Brandon's teenage years were like many Alaskans. Happy, athletic, drawn to the mountains and beauty around him, most comfortable outside in the wilds of the last frontier.
He loved the outdoors. I mean, from the day we brought him home from the hospital, he was sliding down mountains and climbing through rivers and climbing trees and doing all kinds of stuff all the time.
He was raised by his grandmother, Nancy, and close to his cousins, as well as his uncle and aunt.
He was just really caring all the time. He used to have a really boogery nose when he was little, all the time, so I always called him my booger. And I called him, he was my booger till the day. He's still my booger.
By any measure, Brandon had a bright future. But then he tried heroin, and he was instantly hooked. He struggled with it for years. But even when struggling, he would text with his close-knit family, checking in, making sure they knew he was safe.
He was just a ray of sunshine all the time. He had these little eyes that when he'd smile, they just looked like life.
The night in question, the night of December 2nd, began with a knock on the door. Brandon's family says a friend asked Brandon for help, and the two left the home together. That was the last time anyone in the family saw Brandon alive.
So this is where
he was killed.
We believe that he was killed.
Even if they have no confirmation on the details.
No definitive word from the police. But our best guess, it was around here.
It's up there.
I can't remember where they dug it out. I think it was like this area right here.
Yeah.
Where he was shot.
Nearly 3 years have passed, and Anchorage police have not publicly released specifics in the case, citing an ongoing investigation. But on that cold December night, officers showed up at Brandon's grandmother's home asking to talk.
There were 2 police officers outside, and they insisted on coming in. They told me that he had been severely beaten, strangled, and then shot and did not survive. And that his body was still at the crime scene.
Police did release this photo of 3 men, calling them people of interest in the shooting death that happened here on East 6th Avenue. At the time this picture was taken, all 3 are believed to be in their late teenage years or early 20s. 2 had backpacks, and 1 had an orange hat, police said.
Laughing. Like it was a fun Saturday night, I guess. And that's hard to take.
The family says police took a person in for questioning who they believed had witnessed Brandon's killing. He was later released.
He will not testify. He won't say what happened.
But he was there. He knows everything that happened. I couldn't imagine myself watching somebody die and then not saying anything.
Police won't discuss the case, whether there was a confirmed witness. But those who loved Brandon most are adamantly seeking justice and do not want this case to be forgotten.
I'm not naive enough to think that, doing this is gonna, the killer's gonna come out and just confess, or, it's gonna lead to anything directly, but just anything, any evidence, any testimony, any kind of information, I would hope that somebody would.
Brandon was one of 35 people murdered in 2017, a record number of homicides for Alaska's largest city. Brandon's name was also added to another growing list of Alaska Native men who have died violently in the 49th state.
Just wanted to have something to remember him by.
The family now spends precious time with Brandon here.
We just come and talk to him.
Always leaving fresh flowers, no matter the time of year.
We come every Sunday. With
Every single
flowers.
Sunday without fail.
There are cards and pictures across.
He was pretty amazing. I miss him a lot.
The family says police check in less often.
Carrie said that she felt because he had an addiction problem that police didn't spend as much time with his case. Do you feel that way?
I'm not sure if it's because of his addiction problem. I mean, I've wondered actually if it's because we're Alaska Native.
She still hasn't forgotten a comment she says an officer made to her in the days after Brandon's death.
The detective on his case, for example, in the first call to me, said to me, well, what do you expect is going to happen to a thug when he hangs around other thugs?
So many people make mistakes and so many people fall to drugs. That doesn't mean they're worth less than anybody else. Like, good gracious, if we were all judged on our mistakes, so many of us make mistakes. He had an entire life ahead of him.
20 years of fading photos, memories, and treasured text messages.
Him telling me that he's working on it and he knows. He's talked about how he knew because I was like, I love you tons. He said, I know you love me, and I'm trying. I just don't want you to worry. And then the very last one that I sent him, just, I love you, check in. He never saw before he died. So it just sits there, unread. Forever.
If you have information on any of the cases that we talked about, please call Anchorage Police at 311 or call Crime Stoppers at 907-561-STOP to remain anonymous. We want to thank the families and the friends who shared their stories and hope they find some measure of peace. They say justice delayed is justice denied, and for many who are seeking justice, they're still waiting.